Starting a tech business takes more than a good idea. It takes data, innovation, and agility. Our guest is a twice exited femtech startup entrepreneur with a deep passion for helping founders bring new ideas to market without wasting time and money. How wonderful does that sound? Let's get going. Stay tuned for the Startup Life live show. Let's glow, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Startup Life Live Show. I'm your host, Ande, Lyons, 4 times founder and startup champion to founders around the world. And after raising 4 businesses of my own, I now share founder startup stories to help newly minted business owners find the solutions and inspiration they need to succeed. And I'm so grateful you carved out time to tune in and up your founder game, because as you do better, your business does better, and we learn from each other. So today you may find a new resource or a tool or a solution or have an aha moment from hearing our guests' founder journey and startup stories. If you're joining us live today, please share a woohoo in the comment section. And if you're watching the replay, do the same, because I love swinging by and saying hello and finding out what you're up to. And if you like the founder stories and gems you're hearing today, grab this URL and share it on your feed. And if you resonate with the show's mission of amplifying diverse voices while serving first-time founders around the world, please consider supporting the Startup Life live show with your sponsorship via Patreon. You can find all the details at andelyons.com. And hey, thank you for liking this video, all right? Because wherever you're watching, because we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Periscope, it's got to be like a dance to this, Twitch, and I know I'm missing something in there in the lineup. Did I say LinkedIn? Anyway, we're live on 5 platforms. And when you share your like, it goes out and reaches more folks that you may not even know who are in your community who want to hear what's happening today or would benefit from our conversation today. And if you're watching on YouTube, oh boy, please click the subscribe button and the bell icon so you get an alert whenever I go live or post a new video. Thank you for that. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest today. Her name is Cynthia Del'Aria. And I got to tell you, 5 times female tech founder. What? And twice exited. What? I need that mind blown emoji right here. Twice exited startup entrepreneur who launched her first business at the age of 15. And we're not talking launched it. Oh, isn't that cute? No, she launched it and she sold it 4 years later. A tech startup ninja, Cynthia's passion is helping people with new ideas for a business or a tech solution. She helps them fail fast so that they can save their precious time and hard-earned money for the idea that has the best shot at making it big. So let me just show you what she's up to now, because this passion led Cynthia to launch Precursa, a predictive technology platform that helps founders more accurately assess the viability and future success of their new ventures. I say put that AI and machine learning stuff to work and help you have a better chance at finding your sweet path and your sweet spot to success with your startup idea. Let's bring Cynthia into the room and start celebrating her wonderful work in the world. Welcome to the show, Cynthia.
Thanks, Ande. Woohoo! So glad to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. Where are you hailing from?
I am here just outside of Denver, Colorado, in Littleton.
In Littleton, Colorado. Now, I know we've got someone right here from Colorado. Hello, Heather McCormick Rimey. She has a beautiful ranch. It's called, well, Wild Hair, WHR. Okay, so it's called Wild Hair Ranch because it was a wild hair idea when she and her husband went, why not leave downtown Denver, where they both have very successful careers, and go start a ranch, right? Why not?
I love
Organic
that.
Everything. So happy to see you, Heather. And from Ottawa, Canada, Brent, you're the best. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And thank you for clarifying. Wild Hair Ranch. Honest to goodness, Heather, I love and adore you. You're like the coach of my dreams. And yet I still stumble over Wild Hair Ranch. Jeez. Anyway, so excited to have you here, Cynthia. You know, the startup life is filled, it's just one big roller coaster ride, right? Or like
Yes.
this. Where are you on the roller coaster ride right now? Because you're launching a new business and you're ramping up, you've got things happening. Where are you on all of this, Curvy?
Well, I think any entrepreneur would tell you that it depends on the day. So I would say that right now, we're gearing up for fundraising in a really big way. And I know that a lot of founders hate the pitching process. I really love it because I love talking to people. I love getting to tell my story. I love getting to hear the feedback and see, how are people relating? What do they understand about what I'm trying to do? Where are the gaps? Like, I love that whole process, right?
You're a solutionist. You're a problem solver. You're like,
I am.
oh, I got to get some feedback. They're going
Yeah.
to tell me about the holes instead of going, I'm going to get some feedback and they're going to tell me about the holes. I love that.
I know.
Everybody take that on from Cynthia. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Objection handling is just another opportunity to know more about what you're doing and understand your user better,
There you go.
So I love that. Yeah. So I would say right now we're riding a high. Because we're like 2.5, maybe 3 months from a full launch. We just
Nice.
developed our B2B sales strategy, working directly with incubators and accelerators, which is really fun. So we've got a couple of conversations with those in the works. So I'm on a high right now, other than, like Heather just said, it depends on the day, right? Like, as an entrepreneur, you're kind of like, am I getting sleep today or am I just powering through? And last night was one of those, I'm just going to power through.
Everybody, come on, raise the hand, do the clapper on that one. That is the founder journey 100%. And that's why, you really are building muscles out there, you first-time founders. None of this was easy when any of us started it the first time, but boy, you get a little more agile, you get a little more flexible, do a little more what we call founder stretching so that you can go with the flow. It's a special type of yoga exercise, right?
That's right. And what's funny is that from the first time I was a founder, I was a teenager. So I was kind of like, I didn't even know that's what I was doing. Right. So the second time I was probably more present in my journey in my mid-20s. And the thing that you realize when you do it 2, 3, 4, and now I'm on my 5th time, there are things where you go, oh man, I forgot about this part. And because you know what's coming, you almost have to work a little bit harder to keep going because you're like, oh, that's right. I forgot about this.
Yeah. And women who birth babies, you remember that because, afterwards the euphoria is so high, but
that's right. Like, that's right. Baby amnesia.
Didn't I say I was going to do drugs next time? What the? I'm breathing through this again.
Yep. Startup amnesia is a thing.
That is so good. Hey, speaking of startups, I want folks tuning in, please, if you're live, please share your business name, your one-liner, and your website URL. We'll put it right up here on the big screen, just like we did with Heather and her ranch, and we'll celebrate you and your work in the world. So we want to know, even if it's a dream, okay? Even if it's something that you're thinking about. I just watched Summer of Soul, phenomenal documentary about 1969 and this incredible concert series that went on in Harlem. And Stevie Wonder, and I grabbed the quote and made a meme out of it because it was so important. He said, when he was transitioning right at that point in his own career, he said, I didn't want to let my dreams die. I didn't, I really needed to not let fear keep me from realizing those dreams. And so founders, we have a deep appreciation for the journey you're going through. So please pop questions, concerns, anything that you're going through, pop them into the comment section. And those of you watching the replay, we can swing back and answer any questions you have, especially since we're talking to such a phenomenal representation of women in technology, Cynthia Del'Aria. So we're going to be picking your brain big time, but I want to start off right away with 15 years old, and clearly it wasn't the lemonade stand story or, the seed catalog. What was it that at 15, an idea you had that you said, oh, I got to start a business around this?
Yeah, so I wish it was that conscious, because that would be a better story, right? But really what happened is I worked as a barista at a coffee shop in a mall in Southern California for a few weeks, maybe a month. And turns out I wasn't any good at it. And I was constantly like bossing the boss around. And so I came in one day for a shift, and she was like, or I said to her, I don't think I'm very good at this, and I don't think I should keep doing it. She was like, oh, thank God, because I thought I was going to have to fire you, right? And so I was like, well, I like having the money part. So what else could I do? Right. And I'd been coding since I was 8 years old. My mom took classes at a community college, and she always had books laying around, and I just loved to read. And I ran out of books. We hadn't been to the library in a while. So I picked up one of her coding books, her Visual Basic books. And
as one does.
Yeah. Well, and 3 days later, there was stuff flying around the screen, like
I
3D.
love
So,
them.
and it was so satisfying. Right. And so, by the time I was, 14, 15 years old, I'd taken a college class on the internet, and the instructor showed me how to view source in order to learn how to do HTML. And so I just started with people in my church who were business owners, and I was like, hey, are you on the internet? Oh, you're not on the internet yet? That's like the phone book of the future. You need a web page. You want me to build that for you? I'll give you a really good deal. And it was like such an easy sell. And people around my church who are business owners got to know the kind of work that I did, and they really liked working for me. And so then they would refer me to other business owners they knew. And before you know it, I had like maintenance contracts and like contracts with
gosh.
cool companies. And
Hello, Cynthia. I can't start my laptop. What happened? Can you come over?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Oh, Cynthia, I need another page. Like, what does a page mean? I don't know. Like,
That's
how
right.
do people contact me? Is this
That's
like
right.
a trifold? No, it's a website.
Where did my email go? What's email again? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, two things I have to say. Anybody out there, I've been unemployable. Hello, my name is Ande, and I've been unemployable since 92. Many founders have that same experience.
Yes.
Like, this isn't good. We get fired a lot. That is such a good story. And, but Cynthia, I've got to say, I've heard that a lot. I've heard a lot of people say, yep, and I helped with web, and I did this and got people going. It was the late 90s. And then, kept moving forward a little bit into the 2000s. Then I went off and did something else. You sold, you got it. What happened that along the way that someone said, oh, I like what you're doing, and I want your customer list?
Yeah. So I had bid on a very attractive contract with a company that a lot of people knew. They really wanted the relationship. And given that I was a teenager and I just had really low expenses. I mean, I didn't really have an office. I had a bunch of people who were like contractors who I'd bring in for various jobs to help me, do the work. So I was able to come in dramatically lower than anybody else, which in a lot of cases was a red flag for companies. And we lost a lot of business that way. But this particular company, the guy, they brought me in, they interviewed me, that we talked a little bit. I gave them some strategic advice about what I would do with their project. And he called me back in like a week later, and he was like, he said, I love what you're doing. He's like, the referrals are just off the charts. He's like, I mean, the way that people talk about you and the way you work, I've just never heard anything like that before. And he said, so here's what I'm going to do. He said, you're so young. I mean, I was literally like 17 and a half. I wasn't even 18 yet. He's like, you're so young, and this is so much money, and it's so important to our company, and we're very high profile and all this. Right. And he said, so what I want to do is I want to give you 6 months, and I want you to get started. And at the end of 6 months, I want to come back and see, where are we? Like I want to have a check-in point. And he's like, if at 6 months we don't feel it's going well, or you're overwhelmed, or like, we'll shake hands and we'll part ways, and no harm, no foul. And he's like, but I think we need that because you're just so young. and I'm 18 years old, 17, 18 years old, whatever I was at the time. I'm baby faced. I'm like barely out of high school. Right. I mean, so I was like, yeah, I totally get it. I appreciate you taking a chance. And I promise you're not going to be disappointed. So it was 3 months to the day later, he came in, he brought me into the office. And of course, as a teenager, you're like, oh my gosh, am I about to get fired? Like, did I do something wrong? Like, I'm looking back, and he brings me and he goes, he's like, I can't even believe what you've been able to do. We're signing the full contract today. So when that contract was locked in, woohoo. When that contract was locked in, I had a couple of my competitors say, we'd really love to have this relationship. We'll buy your company and your book of business if you'll transition that relationship. And so I spent the next year and a half or so doing that work and ultimately making sure that the clients are really well taken care of, because that's what I did. That's what's always first for me, is that people matter the most.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what was most important in the transition for me.
I love this story, something fierce. I have so many questions. First of all, who was that man? I mean, that was a highly evolved human.
Yes, he really was. He really was.
Took a chance and you set it up so he could bow out gracefully.
That's right.
Folks, when you can set the expectations up like that, clearly up front, everybody wins from that.
That's right.
And then he said, you know what? I'm not going to be caged by her age. And you, Cynthia, was like, I'm not going to be caged by my age. I'm going for that contract. And you did it. And you had a good 2+ years, 3 years under your tiara at that point, from which you had learned already at the tender age of 17, almost 18, how to engage people. I mean, when you think about the guy from Squarespace, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was all about setting up quick and easy websites, but he'd never employed anybody. When he got all his funding, he was still like, how do I manage people?
Yeah. That's true. That's true. I was very fortunate on the management front, because my mom, she was also in tech, and she was a manager. She managed the quality engineering department for Earthlink, which then merged with Mindspring.
Yes, we all remember Earthlink if we're old enough.
So she managed, she ended up like VP of quality engineering there. And the thing that she always told me was, managing people is about removing roadblocks. It's about putting the right people in the right seat on the bus, and then making sure that there's nothing blocking them from being able to do the thing that they're amazing at, because that's why you hired them. And that's what keeps people engaged, right? It's interesting to me listening to the conversations about what creates a good culture, and like, it's this mystery, and it's like, people want to do the thing that they're great at. They want to be in their zone of genius as much as possible. And in your role as a manager or as leadership is to make sure they're doing that work, and they have the ability to do that work by removing all the things that don't fall into that category. Because I can promise you, even removing something from someone and going, well, this doesn't seem like it would be anyone's zone of genius. I promise there are people who love doing technical documentation.
Can we just take a moment? Is Mom still with us?
Yeah.
So, Mom. Okay. And all the moms out there.
That's right.
Your lived experience can help your daughter or son succeed.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
I can't tell you how good I feel about that advice from Mom. And also, yes, thank you for that piece of brilliance about people. As a leader, you're not there, and women can get a little clingy as to how the role should be done. You're there to let someone shine. And as your mom said, dissolve the roadblocks so they can have a great experience and bring their best, up their own game, giving them that support that they need to grow within the position.
Yep.
Oh, that was so good.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm just going to celebrate my wonderful coach here, Heather McCormick-Rimey. She has whrhealing.com, folks who are listening on the podcast. Holistic life coach and energy healer, helping women visionaries step forward in shining their light.
Yay.
We love that. Something fierce. And she just wants to add, Cynthia, you're amazing.
Oh, thank you. I think you're amazing too.
And then Brent, thank you for that. Diversity and inclusion are important in the business world. We need different perspective, everybody. We can't just having everybody from the same pie. And Mia, thanks for tuning in from your beautiful place in Crestone, Colorado.
More Colorado.
I know. Mia Voss, Cynthia, I know you two are going to meet. And Mia is on a retreat, but so I'm so grateful that she's tuning in. She's one of my favorite people because Mia has this amazing podcast, Cynthia, called Shit We Don't Talk About. And she goes there, right?
I love that.
Phenomenal conversations about those topics that you want to go deeper on, but you don't know how.
Yes.
Okay. So good. So good. All right. So moving right along, at the tender age of 19, had you planned to go on to college? Had you planned to, or you fully into tech and tech was going to be your jam?
So I was actually in college and I ended up dropping out to do the work to get the company sold and
Yeah.
everything. And I figured, at some point I'll go back, but now I had some money. And so I was like, oh, let me go on vacations and let me do cool experiences. And I'm one of those
Let me
people.
be 19.
Yeah, exactly. Let me be 19. Right. And
Yeah.
I grew up fairly poor, very humble beginnings. And so when you take a poor kid with a lot of ambition and a lot of drive and give her money, she doesn't know what to do with that, right? Like nobody ever taught me. So it was
Such a good point.
it was about 8 or 9 months later, I was actually living in my car.
What,
So
Cynthia?
I'm one of those people who I love experiences, not things, right? Like I don't accumulate stuff. I like trips and I like travel and I like dinners with friends. And that stuff can really add up and get pretty expensive after a while.
Oh, and it takes a toll on your heart and soul, but it becomes a lived experience, as Arlen always talks about in her incredible book.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So, and I'm with you 100%. I am not the one who watches everybody at the University of Life. Oh, I need to try that to see how I feel about it. And you're
Yeah.
right. It's about the experiences. You don't want to just watch those sunsets. You want to be like, I want to be
That's
in that
right.
sunset.
Well, and that's my problem with Instagram is I'm like scrolling through, looking at all these gorgeous places. I'm like, I want to go there. I don't want to just look at it. I want to be in it.
Oh my gosh. So you were like, you put the money, you said, okay, so I built a business, I sold
Yep.
it, I know what I'm doing. And I actually am like, the rock star who now is broke because they don't know what to do with the money.
Yep.
The right people. But okay, you're still young.
Yep.
So how did you dive into your next business?
Yeah. So I actually went to work for Earthlink in the software engineering department. I was like, well,
Great.
they have some job openings. My mom got me an interview. They really liked me. So they hired me. I learned a lot of stuff because
Oh,
up until
good.
this point, I'd been mostly self-taught. And in
Mhm.
college, I actually studied math. And so I never had a formal education in coding, right? And so this was sort of my first entree into that. And so I took a lot of opportunity to learn and a lot of opportunity to grow. And then when I decided to move to Colorado in 2002, was when I started my second business because I came out
Wow.
here and I was like, there was some people who needed some temporary or part-time kind of development support.
And the dot-com industry had just blown up.
Yep. Yep. And so it was like,
And
oh, this is
post
a thing.
9/11.
Yeah, but there were still companies everywhere that had
Yeah.
all this tech and they needed support for it, right?
Yeah.
And so I started another consulting business and ended up with a niche turning boxed software into online distributions, right? Because download speeds are getting faster, companies are trying
Yes.
to reduce their costs by not having to create a box and not having to have a distribution channel into Staples or Office Max or whatever, right? And
Well, that was
so
cutting edge then.
it really was.
It
It really
really
was.
was.
And, we didn't really realize that, I don't think. I mean, we developed some background intellectual property that helped us do
Well,
this work faster and cheaper for people.
didn't we still have like the floppy or
Yeah,
CDs and
there were still 5 and a quarters for sure. Yeah, definitely CDs. I mean, this was prime time when AOL was sending everyone 50,000 CDs, a day. Use our internet, right? And so we basically had this background intellectual property that we didn't realize how valuable it was until we were approached by a company that was picking up a bunch of small companies that had pieces of this technology and integrating them into a larger solution, more holistic solution. And when they approached me, I was like, oh, well, that's cool. Like I never, what product, what? And so that company sold for more, which was really fun.
nice. Nice.
And that
And
was when I realized
so
like product's the way, right?
yeah. Yeah. So you
Yeah.
had an acquisition.
Yes, we had an acquisition.
Yeah, you were
Yep.
bundled up. And folks, if you are feeling a little stagnant in your own business, bundling up a couple of other companies, bringing them in increases value exponentially and
That's right.
positions you for a delicious exit.
That's right.
And sometimes you can't do it on your own. You really
No.
need to find a company and a few other parts and pieces. So hooray for them and hooray for you.
Yeah.
And I also sort of want to step back to when you worked at Earthlink, because boy, as a founder and especially a young entrepreneur like you,
Yeah.
getting in-house and seeing all the mistakes companies make so you'll know how to do it better, and all the right
All
things
the
that
great
they do.
things. Yep.
Yeah, the systems and procedures that are in place, because when you grow from your startup into enterprise, you have to have those systems and procedures. And really the real challenge, founders, that you're going to experience is, how do I keep innovation happening when I have
That's right.
systems and procedures, right?
That's right. I always talk about how the hardest job of a founder, and the thing that really doesn't exist in the wild, but it can be taught. Like if you're realizing that this isn't you, that's okay. I teach it all the time, is balancing keeping the strategy and the vision in the long term, keeping that vision while also finding the incremental steps to execute along the way. And mostly people are really good at one or the other. They're either like totally strategic and no execution, or they're like all execution, but they're not really sure what they're working towards. And that's your thing as a founder, is figuring out how to marry those two skills and have them both work at peak efficiency. So if you're somebody who's like strategic and vision and you tend towards that, you need a really good operator. Like, you need a solid COO.
Right.
If you're someone who would be a COO, you need someone with that like strategy and vision. You need a CEO in your world, right?
That's right. Right. And there you go, founder. Self-awareness
That's right.
is key. You can't be it all. Sorry.
Nope.
It's not going to
Nope.
happen. Oh my
Nobody
gosh.
is.
So now you've got really some powerful experiences behind you. You are a young woman. You are a young woman in tech still.
Yep.
Tell us, what is it about tech that makes your heart sing? You shared a little bit about it earlier, and when you were 15 and you just loved picking up those books about coding and all the things that happen. But what is it that really just makes you so passionate to get up and keep doing it, and this particular industry as well?
Yeah, what I love about technology is how accessible it makes things, right? It used to be that innovation, creativity required so much in the physical world that it was almost difficult to see something come to life or bring something to the market. And technology creates this accessibility, this like proliferation of innovation and creativity in a way that nothing else really does. I mean, if you look at since the smartphone came on the market, and then the first iPhone, which was like really the biggest, most disruptive thing that had happened in decades, right? It completely changed communication. It changed the way that we experience the world and the way that we stay in touch with one another. And I mean, just, it was so disruptive and so innovative. And now everybody's got an idea for an app. And I love that. Like, I love that people are like, because it's accessible. I mean, people who aren't tech savvy are now like, hey, what if I could build this and put it on an app and people could just use it on their phone? And I'm like, I love that. Like, I love how it gets people thinking, and it makes them feel that much closer to the process of having something realized in the world that is their vision.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Something first. So everybody remember a few episodes ago, we had Miriam, who, no tech background, works at the World Bank, for crying out loud, loves gaming. And she said, why does gaming have to be such a heavy duty coding experience, right? She goes, no, I want to develop a no code game platform.
Which I love. Like, that's brilliant.
And, off and running, there she goes.
That's right.
That is the beauty of tech. Well, I always feel it's sparking. Folks, if you visit, or I should say, when you go to connect with Cynthia on LinkedIn, all the links are in the show notes. Check out how, the picture of her, because she's jumping in the air. In fact, when I first saw it, of course, I'm dating myself, I thought of Van Halen and the song Jump, because it's go ahead and jump. Why not? Go ahead and code. Go ahead and, whatever.
Or you remember in the 80s, the Toyota commercials?
No, tell me, or refresh
when
my
they
memory.
used to like Toyota,
yes.
and they would like jump up in the air next to the car.
Yes. Me, I know you've seen that too. Oh my God. That's right.
Yeah.
That's great. And so where did you go next? When you said, okay, I've got these two companies behind me now. Now tell us, what's your next startup story?
Yeah. So my next startup story starts with another big fat oops moment, I guess. So
Yay.
this time I was like, hey, last time I blew through a lot of money really fast. I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to get some information and some knowledge and do what smart people do with money. And I had a wonderful mentor who was a commercial real estate investor. He was brilliant. He was also a certified trainer for CCIM. And he spent a ton of time teaching me how to look for good real estate deals. Cause that's one of those places where I'm like, well, I know a lot of wealthy people that put their money in real estate. So let's go do that. Right. I probably sent him 30 or 40 deals over the next year and a half. And every one of them, he was like, well, this one's not good because of this. And this one's not good because of this. And this one, there's too much liability and blah, blah, blah. And at some point, I mean, let's be fair. I'm like 26, right?
Yeah.
So of course I know better. And I was like, well, he doesn't really know the Denver market. And this is a building in DTC. This is going to be great. Like, I'm totally going to do this. Right. And so I went into this deal with 2 other people, and this was summer of 2007. The building was great. It was like 92% occupied. It had a really good profit margin in it. Like, everything seemed great. In like April of 2008, my 2 partners were bought out of the deal. They wanted out of the deal. So we restructured the deal and I bought them out. And it was August of 2008 when we were at 12% occupancy and the real estate market was crashing down around me. And here I am, 27 years old or whatever. And the bank is looking at this portfolio on this building and all of this mess that they're dealing with. And they were
so
like,
underwater.
we're calling the loan. If you can pay it, you can keep it. Otherwise, we're going to sell it and you owe the difference. And so I cashed out everything I had in savings and everything I had in retirement. I put a mortgage on my house, a loan on my car. And to make up the rest, I wrote $350,000 in credit card advance checks.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah. So now
You really wanted to keep that building.
No, I didn't get to keep the building. They sold it. That was just making up the difference.
Oh no. Instead of filing bankruptcy. Wowza.
Yeah. So now I have no savings, no retirement, and I'm $650,000 in debt.
And you have no assets.
No
you
assets.
Have debt.
Nothing. And so I went to a bankruptcy attorney and he asked me the story. I started telling him, and, I built and sold 2 companies, but this happened and, whatever. And he like sets his pen down and he pushes the notepad to the side. And I was like, oh no, this is going to be bad. Right. And he goes, he said, technically you're bankrupt. He's like, we could do this. And he's like, but you can't. He's like, you have to find a way out of this, because if you don't, you'll never create anything again and the world will lose something. And I was like devastated, right? I got in my car. I'm like crying. I'm like trying to figure out, do I go find a different bankruptcy attorney? Like, what do I do? Right?
How do I manage this debt? I mean, was it going to just sit there like a big line? What insight? I mean, my gosh.
I thank God for that man. Every time I tell this story, I'm grateful for him, because I gave myself the weekend. I actually ended up ordering a bunch of like money books and gurus and all that kind of stuff, trying to like figure out how would I sort this out if I actually tried to tackle the problem. And by the time Monday rolled around, I was like, he's right. I'm perfectly capable of handling this. And there's a lesson in here somewhere, and it's an important one. And I'm ready to go on the journey and learn it. So the first lesson was humility. I called one of the gentlemen who was the ultimate buyer of my company, my second company. And I said, I need a job. Like, what you got? And so he made some introductions, and I got a job, as like a developer at a company here in town.
You have a little debt to service, a little bit of overhead.
Yeah, I got a little bit of a challenge here. And so I just kind of started attacking it very methodically through one of the financial coaches that I found. In the first 6 months, I had about $100,000 gone. I sold a bunch of stuff that I didn't need. Lived very, very frugally. I mean, incredibly frugally. And once I had that first $100,000 gone, I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, I can totally do this. And it took me about 6.5 years, but I did climb out of it.
Congratulations. Yeah. Big hugs and big celebrations. And was he right? Did it leave you freer to do more and bring more?
because what I realized is a couple things, right? all of the experiences that I've had from being a really young kid living in Western North Carolina, where there were plenty of days where we had to choose between food and heat in the middle of a snowstorm, right?
Yeah.
And I know myself as someone who can always pick myself up and try again. And that's invaluable, especially as a founder, because in case you weren't aware, which I'm sure you are, 90% of startups fail. And what that means is if you're not good at failure, you're probably going to stop after the first time that you fail. But the world is going to miss out on whatever it is that you have to offer and whatever it is that you are supposed to be bringing and that you are supposed to be innovating and creating when you stop. So knowing myself as someone who doesn't stop and who's willing to make mistakes and take risks and fail and get up and try again, the getting up and trying again is the piece that is most important to me. And I don't think I saw that nearly the way that I do after having had this experience and digging out of that big hole.
Everybody. I almost did a double there. Oh my gosh, Cynthia.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah.
I think also that you were able to go deeper into what we would call scarcity, poverty mindset around money, because this forced you to go get the books on how to have money work for you, how to make better decisions around money, how to be a lean and mean machine, and all the things that you needed to come back from that. And as a 4 times founder, who has had, with my second, well, of course, my first business at .com with 8 million behind it, blew up with everybody else. And we were like minutes away from a solid revenue. So I have a deep appreciation for that. And then, of course, my food manufacturing business, I was just going to the whole next level, what I would call the Kellogg's distribution, when my manufacturing facility got hit by lightning and burned to the ground. And 2 of my primary products had a horrible drought and just like you couldn't even get them.
Oh my gosh. It's just devastating, right?
Yeah, very devastating. But, and I thought, oh boy, what am I going to do now? But you just, something as people know, my businesses come to me like stray cats at the door and yowl until I let them in. But the beauty of your story was that, okay, you didn't let that, what would be insurmountable, not just debt, but shame for someone.
Yeah.
You were young, 26, 27, and you said, okay, I'm going to go take a job. I'm going to, and you had good people in your Rolodex and you reached out and you made that happen. And then you saw it all come together. So thank you for sharing that meaningful story for people everywhere. As Mia saying, I love the reality of this journey. And Heather saying, getting up and trying again, such an important conversation.
Yeah.
Folks, what is shame? What is embarrassment, really? I mean, Cynthia, let's just talk about that for a second, because it's a lot of what holds people back from even trying. Oh, what if I don't do it right? What if it doesn't work out? The embarrassment and the shame.
Yes.
Where else can people put that emotion so that they understand how to get back up again?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And it's something that I've sort of been transforming a little bit for myself again, because as we're in the process of fundraising for my new venture, one of the questions I get all the time from investors is, but you exited 2 companies, why don't you use your own money? And I'm like, let me tell you about how I got my MBA, right?
Right. And what were you doing at that age, buddy?
That's right. And so when you explain it, then they totally get it. And they're like, whoa, right? And it's actually really vulnerable and it's very connecting. But I have noticed, before I kind of started dealing with this over the last few months, there was a lot of shame and there was regret. Like, why did I make all those mistakes? I would be in such a different place now and have different options available to me. And the thing that I've learned as I've been talking to investors, which I know a lot of founders feel like the pitch process is just really painful. I actually really love it because I love connecting with people. I can create connection with anyone, anywhere, anytime. And that to me is what the world is all about. It's about people. It's about relationships. It's about how you connect with others, right? And so I actually really love this process. And what what I've realized about the shame is it's actually just an excuse to hold myself down. What's actually possible is being present in the conversation and saying what's actually available by not having that kind of capital to just throw myself into this business and spend my own money is the opportunity to go on this journey in a way that I haven't before, which is to have other people with me and to have investors and to have co-founders and to build something with other people.
Right.
And that's unique. For me, I've always bootstrapped and I've always been a sole founder.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's an opportunity. You can either give into the shame of, oh my gosh, I'm having to do this because I made so many horrible mistakes, or I can give into the vulnerability and the opportunity to share myself and my heart and to have other people along the journey with me. And given the option between the two, I'm really enjoying pitching and having co-founders. So
That's right. And also, remember, I heard this recently too, which is like you take the leftovers, folks, and you create a delicious meal,
that's exactly right.
right?
That's exactly right.
You pull all those parts and pieces from your oopsie daisies and your weehoo and your runt rows, and you pull it all together, and you're like, okay, look at this delicious meal, everybody, come on.
That's right.
And I love that you're working and building with others this time, because as you bring in investors, folks, the beauty of all of that is it forces you to do true governance of your business. It forces you to be out here looking in, making sure, folks, if you ink your business, please do what's in that binder or whatever you get into your digital documents, and staying on top of your business.
That's
You
right.
start understanding what it means to have a board of advisors and how to manage that relationship and what that looks like, and the money that is coming in and how you are going to leverage it for the business to move forward.
That's exactly right.
Thank you, Cynthia, for that lovely
Yeah.
conversation. And I especially love your comment about how shame can turn into your excuse for holding you back. And trust me, you do not want to have that regret when you're taking your last breath. That
Nope.
shame, embarrassment, fear held you back, because the world really does need what you're offering. We're not asking you to be the next Oprah, the next, fab female tech founder. We're asking you to just bring what it is that you have to fruition. Thank you for that. So let's talk about your new baby. I mean, your new business and Precursa, and how, AI and machine learning data can help founders more accurately assess
Yep.
the viability of their startup idea. So share some wins, some losses, some information about that, and how you saw yourself really able to save people money and time along the journey.
Yeah, so I've been building companies for so long, and at some point other people started asking me to help them build their startups, or companies were asking me, how do we bring this digital product to market? We've never done that before. And early on, I didn't realize there's something that I do inherently and naturally whenever I'm starting a new something that most people don't do. And what that is before I spend money on development, before I build a prototype, before I build a wireframe, I go talk to actual end users. I figure out what is the problem I'm really trying to solve, and who are the people who have the problem who need me to solve it for them. And I go find a bunch of them to talk to. And we call this user validation, right? And from there, then you can start to dig into, okay, what does my MVP really look like? What is my solution potentially going to look like? Let me do solution validation with some people, and then let me figure out, will the market bear a business like this? And what is it going to take to get to market, to get to revenue, to get to profitability? And does the investment make sense to get there? That whole process, I would never start a business without doing something like that, right? But there are so many founders I talk to, like Doug, who I had lunch with like 3 years ago, who's telling me this story about how he mortgaged his house, he borrowed against his retirement, he convinced his wife they were going to build this app. It was going to be amazing. He's $500,000 and 4.5 years in, and he's got no customers. And he's coming to me as a product looking for a market, and it makes my stomach sink. And I was like,
It's the
Yeah.
Licking your finger and putting it in the wind, that just doesn't work.
Yeah, and I'm just shocked. Like, as much as technology makes building something so accessible, it also makes people skip steps.
Yeah.
And so over the last 13 years, I've developed a process whereby no matter where somebody is in their startup journey, I can start them at the beginning of this process and walk them through all these steps, and they get to the point where they know what they need to know, and it just works. It's repeatable. I've proven that it works time and time and time again. I've built nearly 100 startups using this process with people. And
Holy mackerel, folks, take that in.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. There's one thing I'm curious about, though. Let me just put this up here to remind everybody, Precursa.com. Innovation is your superpower. Bringing your tech industry changing vision to life is ours.
Yep.
Oh, do I love that tagline? Something fierce. Delicious. But timing, okay,
Yeah.
is also a crucial factor.
Oh, of course.
How can you use predictive technology to know if timing is right? Because I always bring out Airbnb and Uber. No
Yep.
one was going to get into a stranger's car or sleep in a stranger's home or have strangers come into their car and sleep in their home unless the timing of 2008 had happened.
That's right.
How do you do that? Because it is the number one reason startups fail, folks, is because they don't want what you're selling. And it could be just timing.
That's right. 42% of startups fail because no one wants what the company is building. That's according to Crunchbase, and Forbes actually did another independent study and backed that up.
Yes.
There are a lot of different factors that actually go into the potential success and viability of a business. And what's actually crazy is if you look at, there's so much data out there now, so many algorithms, so many analytical AI mechanisms that exist out there where people are studying things like cognitive behavior versus unconscious behavior. And you can actually see patterns and trends that lead you to something being more possibly viable or something being less possibly viable. So we're looking not only at the idea on its own merit, but we're also looking out at, other ideas in the platform and comparing that. And then we're also looking at like PitchBook data and Owler data in the general startup community to understand what are the trends looking like. And so we're interpreting all of this against the things that I look at when I'm working with the company. And I've done a lot of work to take the strategic advice and the strategic feedback that I work with founders on and teach a machine how to look for those kind of trends. And it's not a consultant, but it is darn close. And it's kind of scary when we're like doing some testing and, I've got another client and I throw their idea in there and I'm like, oh, I would say this. And the very next thing that shows up is something almost exactly like that. And I'm like, that's weird. I'm being replaced by a computer.
But you've taught the computer to think like you, though.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And not just me, but like the whole concept of lean canvas and the whole concept of, starting lean and all of it. This is not new, right? But the problem that I see with entrepreneurs is they're like, I want to do the right thing. And I go on startups.com and I watch all this really great content, or I go to entrepreneur.com and I watch all this, read all these great things. But they're still left with now, but what do I do with that? Right. And so we created a roadmap that you never have to ask now what. You're always, exactly what's next. We give you all the hows, lots of examples, things to get you thinking creatively.
It's like having a recipe. Okay, now you need to take the dry ingredients and mix them, and then you're going to add them to the wet ingredients.
That's right. And then all that data, you're taking all this seemingly unstructured data and we're helping you put it in a very structured way. And then we can analyze all of it and tell you actually the sentiment from the user validation interviews that you're doing, the user sentiment is that they wish there was a solution for this, but they don't believe that there is, and they're actually pretty attached to their struggle. They're not looking for an answer, they're looking for sympathy.
So what happens when you have to tell that founder?
Well, unfortunately, I joke about this sometimes, but some days my job is to be a dream killer.
Yikes.
But usually the nugget that led to the original idea, there's usually something in there that if you can find a 2-degree pivot or something one direction or another, or a lot of times in user validation, I'll be looking at the data and I'll say to my client, do you see this huge problem that people are telling you about? I know it's not the thing you thought you were solving for, but oh my gosh. And all of a sudden they go from, a $10 million market cap to $100 billion market cap.
That's
And they're
right.
like, oh, well, that just totally opened up the world. Oh, and it's much more simple too, by the way, right?
Right. So think of the guys who founded Slack, right? Went public, $1 billion valuation. They had lost $17 million trying to build a gaming platform.
That's
And
right.
nobody wanted it. They sucked at it. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Well, it was the way they communicated with each other during that process. Now, if they'd had Cynthia would have said, hello, look at this thing that you've created. Folks are going to want this. All my predictive technology is telling me ding, 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 ding.
That's
and
right.
They sort of fell into it. And because they were so desperate, they created that. And look, Slack today.
Yeah.
So there's and we don't even have to look at the big, the unicorn level of that. You can see that every day in businesses, that because you launched, because you started, because you tried, and because you listened and stayed flexible,
Yeah.
stretch. You found the golden nugget. So that's why starting is so important, everyone.
Yes.
But I love what you're doing here with Precursa. I'm going to bring up the visual again, because you have an innovative problem solving mind and product and idea, folks. It doesn't mean that idea has to be the winner.
That's right.
It's the uncovering and discovering process that you find something that's can be even sweeter, or it could be that idea.
Yeah.
And so how do people work with you? I just love this so much.
Yeah. So we are planning, our launch is slated for actually sometime around Denver Startup Week, which is funny enough.
When is Denver?
Beginning of October. So I think it's like the 4th through the 8th of October. So somewhere between the middle, the beginning and middle of October, we'll be launching. So you can get your name on the list. When we release our first beta, we'll go through and grab like the first 20 or 30 and invite those people early. And then we'll kind of do them in waves.
So on the visual, what I'm showing is request an invite now. Can people click on that and get all of that? Beautiful.
Absolutely.
And it's Precursa, Precursa.com. Go over there and sign up.
And in the meantime, if you're like, hey, I have questions, or, I do startup consulting all the time, shoot me an email at startup@precursa.com. And who knows, maybe we jump on a podcast together, and, we'll record a coaching session, and which always helps people, or something like that.
Absolutely. You do not need to build in the dark, everybody.
No.
I mean, you can build with the lights out as long as you have someone like Cynthia and Precursa and the team helping you. But
exactly
you don't need to be struggling.
That's right.
And the big thing is this mean that you've got to spend so much money and so much time. The best investment is to go with Cynthia, Precursa, and really understand how the process works. Because if you're a first-time founder, you're going to need to know these things.
That's right.
Kids. And what better way? I mean, anybody who's been down this road before would be like, oh, I wish I'd had Cynthia back in the day when I tried that. And I'm hoping we're inspiring somebody who happens to tune in to try again.
Yes. Yes. The number of times I've heard from past founders who had a failure, where they're like, oh, I wish I would have had this when I started last time. And I'm like, it's here now. Like, what do you want to do now? What do you want to build next? Right.
Right.
The thing that I feel like Precursa is actually doing is preserving the entrepreneur for the thing that they're supposed to create. And sometimes we go on very circuitous paths to get there. And all of that can be useful, and there's learning to be had in there. But understanding that the why of what you're building is actually the thing that gets you through all the ups and the downs and the day-to-day and all the stuff is something that a lot of first-time founders don't realize. They think that, oh, I see on TV the $1 billion exit and the unicorn company and this like, and one of the biggest things that I do is I'm like, that's the last 1%.
Right.
everything leading up to that is it's the myth of the 12-year overnight
Night
sensation,
success.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what I'm trying to do is to get people into the flow of creativity so that they don't necessarily hold so tight to their idea that they miss the thing that's they're supposed to be
Right.
creating, but they preserve their mindset and their energy and their passion so that when they do find the one, there's no stopping that founder. And that's really fun.
Wow, that is very profound. Okay, to preserve yourself. We
Yeah,
only have so much energy, folks, and it does take a lot to be courageous every day and try new things and face uncertainty, and somehow build resiliency and persistence along the way and tenacity. And so you need to preserve, you need to have some of that inner self care, but also make the right decisions and the best decisions for your business by not building alone and trying to use all the free stuff online
that's
to
right.
do it. It really, I'm telling you, from attorney to Cynthia, you've got to have your team that protects you and provides for you and gives you the biggest lift for you're bringing your brilliance to the world. You also have a couple of Facebook groups I want you to tell everybody about.
Yes.
And I know you'll share the links with me. We can
Yep.
put them into the show notes as well.
Yeah, well, so I have one group that is for, whether you're a business owner or you're a first time founder or repeat founder, and you're looking for a way to turn this tech idea you have into a successful business with a profit margin. I have a group for that. And, we talk about a lot of different things related to turning tech into a business. And then my other group is I mentor and coach and create a community for women and gender minorities in tech. How do they advance their careers? How do they deal with some of the difficult pieces about being a minority of some kind in
Right.
tech? And how do we elevate more women and more gender minorities into positions of leadership? Because women tend to hit like their early to mid 30s and they're like, I'm out. I don't want to work with 12-year-olds anymore. And the only way we shift that tide is more women staying and starting to
Right.
shift the culture and change the expectation of those environments. And so I am
Yeah,
185,000% for that.
absolutely. I love that. I'm tired of working with 12-year-olds.
And
There's
that's what
nothing
bro culture is. It's
that's,
seventh grade boys running around being like,
yeah,
"Ha ha ha, that's really funny," and you're like,
no,
"No,
it
it's not.
isn't.
Can we get work done? Like,
Yeah.
what's
And
happening here?"
like I can get this done in 5 hours and you're taking what, 9? Because you've got to go and be a
Yeah,
bro while you're at it.
exactly.
That's great. So, as we start to wrap up, you have shared so many nuggets of wisdom with us today along the way, but you still, even with all the experiences that you've had and the mountains that you have climbed to get where you are today, how have you managed imposter syndrome? How have you managed when
Mm.
you have felt inadequate? Yeah, it could have been 5 minutes ago. It happens, when you can feel inadequate as a founder. What has worked for you? What's a tactic that helps you shift?
Yeah, so the first thing is I don't try and pretend it's not there or push it away, right? I acknowledge those feelings when they come up. I acknowledge those thoughts. Sometimes I'll do some journaling and say, so that I can see it, right? The difference is imposter syndrome lives in your head like a monologue. The second you start to have a dialogue out loud, whether it's with someone else or even with yourself in an external format, we're really good at stacking up all of our losses and all of our failures and all the reasons why we're not good enough. What we're not good at is stacking up all the things that make us amazing and that make us who we are and that have gotten us to where we are. So the minute it becomes a dialogue, now you can actually have a conversation with yourself or with someone else to like debunk your imposter syndrome, right? Because it's just not true. And everybody feels that way. And it's
Yeah.
really easy. There's always times where you're stepping into something, you're going beyond your boundaries, beyond your level of knowledge. That's how we grow. So every time I feel imposter syndrome, I remind myself, oh, that's right, because I'm growing, because I'm learning something new, because I'm building myself to have another set of skills, to have something bigger or something better or something that needs to exist in the world. And it just can't yet. And that's okay.
Right. So, folks,
I love that.
stitch that on a pillow. I'm growing.
Yes.
Okay. Cynthia is so right. We tend to stack up everything that we're terrible at, that we're losers at. We like to, no, do the stack. And I love that you use the word stack, right? Stack it up, right?
Stack it up.
Stack up that list of wins and what you're doing great. I don't care if it's the tiniest little thing. You put that in there. I have a Pinterest board, folks. It's a private Pinterest board, but it's where I go and I'm feeling, what are you thinking? And then I go,
Right.
oh, yeah, here we go. There's my stack.
That's
I
right.
love that, Cynthia.
Yeah.
How how may the Startup Life Live community serve you right now? I know we can sign up for things. What else? What else can we support you and Precursa and what you're building in public right now?
Yeah, that's a really great question. We are definitely building our community. We are looking for marketing experts who particularly have direct to consumer experience. We've done a lot of B2B among our founder groups. And we're pitching and raising capital. So if you know people who are interested in investing and they're qualified investors and this might be up their alley, I would love to have an introduction.
Excellent. I love it when people put it out there. This is what we need. Boom, boom, boom.
That's
Bullets. Love it.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining me for this delicious conversation. I'm going to pop you into the green room while I wrap up the show. Hang in there for my virtual hug. So grateful for your incredible wisdom today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Did we not learn a ton from this phenomenal female tech founder? Talk about great representation. I especially love how Cynthia's brain works and how she says, you know what? Every problem has a solution. I just need to find the resource that's going to get me there and figure it out. And founders, you do it too. That's why you've tuned in today. That's why you reach out. That's why you have community. But it's especially helpful when you reach out to other founders who understand what you're going through. And speaking of founders who are pushing the comfort zone out there and have had some fails along the way and a good win, this Friday, July 16th at 12 p.m. EST, we have Raj Seth joining us, and he helps fast-growing e-commerce companies centralize their data. And boy, did he have two lousy, failed e-commerce startups. Yuck. But then he founded RecruiterBox in 2011 and exited to private equity after growing it to 3,000 customers and $4 million in annual revenue. And today he runs FlyData, a company he acquired in 2020 to help fast-growing e-commerce companies centralize their data. So let me tell you, we are talking about the numbers you need to track for jumpstarting your e-commerce platform with this amazing founder with that wonderful smile laughing along the way. And that's another way you can be a founder. You can buy a business and now you're an owner and you're running it. So how do you stay up on all the exciting founder stories that we share here in the Startup Life Live show? You join the Startup Life Live meetup group. Go to bit.ly/Startup Life Live, and live is in all caps, or scan this QR code. Links will be in the show notes, and you'll receive an alert whenever I schedule a new show. And you know, from watching and listening to Cynthia today, this is something you've really got to remember. And from A.A. Milne, and that is, you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and oh yeah, smarter than you think. You've got this. Keep moving forward. Keep getting up every day and learning. And as we said in our Stitch This on a Pillow moment, I'm growing. Okay. And remember that. Until next time, I'm wishing you a delicious day wherever you are. Mwah. See you next time.